I'm so grateful to be with you today and to have Swami Nirvanananda join our satsang team is a special blessing. This week we're getting ready, of course, to launch our second online meditation retreat, Train Your Mind for Wisdom, Compassion, and Strength. So I thought I would address my remarks there today. As we begin to emerge or to consider emerging from shelter mode to re-entry mode, wisdom, compassion, clarity, and strength are all necessary supports for us. And the question comes, how do we free our minds of worry, of anxiety, and of the pull of continual distraction, which looks like this. Lahiri Mahashaya wrote, "Behold the light in yourself with a concentrated mind. By the control of mind and senses, everything is gained." Contemplating that saying by Lahiri Mahashaya had me turn to a verse from the Christian Bible, from John, the 14th chapter, the words of Jesus, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives." That's not what I'm giving to you. Let not your heart be troubled. Don't let your heart be troubled, and do not be afraid. And we have some beautiful teachings, of course, from Paramahansa Yogananda along these same lines. And I'm reading from his book of inspirations, Where There Is Light, Insight and Inspiration for Meeting Life's Challenges. Paramahansaji wrote, "When you worry, there is static coming through your mind radio. God's song is the song of calmness. Nervousness is the static. Calmness is the voice of God speaking to you through the radio of your soul. Calmness is the living breath of God's immortality in you. Everything you do should be done with peace. That is the best medicine for your body, mind, and soul. It is the way to live, the most wonderful way to live." So, of course, the question comes, how do we access that peace? And of course, many of our spiritual practices support our experience of inner peace: prayer, meditation, study, even walking in nature. And this morning, I want to focus our practices that have to do with our relationship to time and to that presence that is both in time and beyond time. First, we can discern that fear and anxiety, of course, are experienced in the moment, but they are based in the future. They are caused by the mind projecting future scenarios. So a primary antidote to that, of course, is meditative awareness. It's noticing where we are, where the mind is, noticing, breathing, remembering, and bringing our attention back into the present moment. Well, that's what our meditation trains us to do. But of course, meditation, as I have said, is like our training wheels on the bicycle of our life. We need to take those same skills and bring them into our everyday life, our everyday experience. So regularly tuning in, just seeing where we are, noticing, breathing, remembering that we live and move and have our being in that field of divine consciousness, that God is our life. I don't always notice if I'm worrying or feeling anxious, and I don't necessarily think I am, but because it can be below the threshold of my ordinary awareness. But if I pause and tune in, sometimes I see that my body is registering stress or worry or anxiety. My shoulders have become attached to my earlobes, or my breath is uneven, or I'm even holding my breath, or I'm sighing. I'm efforting sometimes when I don't need to. Lately, I have been asking myself a question, am I making this more difficult than it needs to be? Am I making this more difficult than it needs to be? During this time, I have noticed a sort of widespread tendency to be disconnected from time itself. And of course, from nature, but from time. And this came more into my awareness the other day, and I was going to have a meeting with a colleague, with a friend, in the afternoon, and I texted him and said, can we meet? And this was about 2:00, and he said, well, later, I have to take a shower. So I wrote back to him and I said, what's a shower? And, it was just a little humorous exchange about how out of time and sync we are. And we're spending so much time online, in meetings, entertainment, connecting with family and friends. But we have to remember that what I call the Zoomiverse is flat, meaning there's no experience of the reality of time, of day or night, of early morning or late afternoon. Connecting online is kind of like reading an ebook, in which there's no depth dimension, there's no spatial relationship to our place in the book. The book just goes on. And when you're holding a physical book, you have an idea of where you had that insight, where you were holding the book, at what place you are, what time you are, and that passage of time in the book. But we don't have that online. And of course, for others who are actively engaged at this time of the global pandemic, who are on the front lines of it, time has also collapsed for them, but in a more urgent, exhausting sense. So I want to look at, what is our relationship to time, and how can that support us to be free from worry and anxiety. So as I contemplated it, I saw three sort of primary ways in which people are approaching time at this juncture. And you may find yourself moving back and forth from the three ways. The first is, some people are what I would call marking time. To mark time is a phrase that means to pass our time in mundane activities until something more favorable or interesting arises. It means to do little while we're waiting for something that is going to happen. So with marking time, people are spending time largely in distraction, on trying to get away from having to think, having to confront what the experience is. So that can show up like too much sleeping, staying busy in unimportant ways, being online, watching too much TV, just waiting for this crisis to be over so we can return to our routine and to our ordinary life. And of course, we would all like the return of some normalcy. But just marking time, which is sometimes called killing time or passing time, we stand to lose the tremendous opportunity that this time is, and the tremendous responsibility that it is. So then I've noticed that there are others who are not just marking time, but they're making time. And by that, I mean they're making time for what truly matters. And they're using the heightened significance of this time to do what they know would be most beneficial. one of the things that's close to us that I've noticed is that since we started offering online meditation practice every morning at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time, people are starting to attend regularly. And many have said that now they finally have put a regular early morning daily practice in place. And that's a wonderful benefit of this time. And, we have to ask ourselves, if not now, when it's so important to be conscious, to be awake, to cultivate peace, freedom from worry and anxiety, if we're not doing it now, when will we do it? And of course, others have begun to cook healthy meals and exercise and study more, making time for priorities that once escaped them. And the third possibility I want to point to is not just marking time, not just proactively making time, but mastering time. And by mastering time, I mean using our creative imagination, using our soul visioning power to see in and through and beyond time, because of course we are not time-bound beings. We're not limited to time, and we can use that visioning power to soar beyond conditions. And I think this is actually connected to making time, because by making time for spiritual practice, there comes a deepening of our inner silence and an expansion of our awareness that leads to mastering time. The wisdom eye of insight opens, and the boundaries of time disappear into seeing the conscious continuum of existence. So we glimpse eternity and this passage of time moving and changing. We have insight into the causes behind conditions. We experience the healing of old wounds and lessons that somehow escaped us. All is coming to us, and we find ourselves also awakened to draw to us what is needed, and the connections that are needed, they begin to come to us effortlessly, not in time efforting, but coming to us in the awareness of deep connection. And we feel a profound connection to all of life. It's revealed to us. Many years ago, when I was just beginning the path of Kriya Yoga, was a time in my life that I was just overcome with anxiety, and I was having panic attacks. I felt my life was falling apart, and I was trying to control it. And the more I tried to hold things together and to control things, the worse my anxiety got, because I needed to let go in order to discover the new life that was waiting for me. At that time, I was terrified of flying, in an airplane. But of course it was because I was terrified of life, and that came from being disconnected from myself, being anchored in myself. But it manifested as this fear of flying. And at that time, my guru, Roy Eugene Davis, was flying all around the world, all around the country, doing many talks on Kriya Yoga. And so I asked him, are you ever afraid of flying? And as you would imagine, he said, no, I'm not afraid. And so I pushed a little further, and I said, well, how do you handle that? And he said, I see myself there. I see myself there. And then what he meant was, instead of fearing disaster and letting the mind take off in this wild imagination, that he would consistently look forward with optimism to what could and would come next. There's a lovely little video that's gone viral. It's a young poet from the UK that his site is called Tomfoolery. And this video that he made is called The Great Realization. And he has used his creative imagination, turning this time into a learning fable, like a children's story. So like a father reading a bedtime story to a child 20 years from now. It's about how 2020 was a year that the global community woke up and began to live in harmony with the earth and one another. A child says, "Tell me the one about the virus again, and then I'll go to bed." And the story says, "It was a world of waste and wonder, of poverty and plenty, back before we understood why hindsight's 2020. So we have this visioning power and this ability, and it's critical that we use it. Are we marking time, making time, mastering time? I want to conclude with a poem by David Byrne. It's really a song, and I encourage you to find it on YouTube. It's called One Fine Day, and they're singing it with the Brooklyn choir. It's quite moving. One fine day, saw the wandering eye inside my heart, shouts and battle cries from every part. I can see those tears, every one is true. When the door appears, I'll go right through. Oh, I stand in liquid light like everyone, that one fine day. In a small dark room where I will wait, face to face I contemplate. Even though a man is made of clay, everything can change that one fine day. Then before my eyes is standing still, I beheld it there, a city on a hill. I complete my tasks one by one. I remove my masks when I am done. Then a peace of mind fell over me. In these troubled times, I still can see. We can use the stars to guide the way. It's not that far, that one fine day.